Four, three,
Three.
two. Welcome back, everybody, to the New Block Nerds podcast. I am your host, Chris, aka Prince, with the homie Duran, aka Medic Grizzly. Duran, what's going on?
Yeah, man. What's going on with you? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing really good.
Good,
It's
good,
Sunday.
good,
I
good,
mean, wife's doing well. It's going good.
good, good. So last week, we touched into brand one of the Game of Thrones. This week we're getting into Catelyn one.
Your favorite character?
There's Oh, here you go. Here we go. So, all right. So, for the people who have not read the books yet, I don't dislike Catelyn.
What?
I just, she just, without spoiling anything, because I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but she makes a lot of questionable decisions. But here's what I will give her. I'm gonna give her some props here. Catelyn is very observant. Very,
Yes.
very observant. She understands politics. She understands how this game is played in a way that her husband, though we love him as much as we do,
Oblivious to
is
everything.
completely inept at
Yes.
any kind of political maneuvering. But anyways, so the chapter starts off with Catelyn in the Godswood. So we find out pretty much right off the bat that Catelyn is from the South and she follows a different religion than her husband Ned, and the other Northerners, right? So she talks about the Northern gods have no names, unlike the Southern Faith of the Seven, which is more of your kind of traditional modern day religion kind of situation that you would imagine. The Northern gods are described as gods of nature, something that they shared with the children of the forest that they mentioned here. So we get a little bit of exposition about just like the difference in some of the cultures in Westeros, which I thought was really interesting. Again, it's still early in the book, so we're getting a lot of explanation for like the current setting and everything like
And to
that.
piggyback off that, Prince, how I like everything with the whole settings. He's also introducing like a whole new world, new environment, and new just overall I guess weather. So like in the opening line for the thing talking about how she never likes the Godwood, how down here is up here is all dark and gloomy, and then where she's from, it's like the birds saying in the hiding nests, spicy scent of flowers. Like it's just a different world. All we've introduced so far is this cold, environment that everyone wants to be like the hardcore guy has to wear all these
Right.
massive layers of clothes. And down there, it's like it sounds like it's all peaceful. You can go outside and walk in the park and X, Y, and Z. You can't really do that up here. It's all just dark.
Right, right, and it compounds on that when we start talking about the description of the Weirwood tree. It's described as brooding, bark white as bone, and they say the leaves are dark red like 1,000 blood-stained hands. So they could have said red as in something else, not blood-stained hands, but they George puts that language in there purposely to make it feel more ominous, more creepy, right? So right off the bat, anyone who hasn't grown up around the heart tree, was what Ned calls it, you'd be pretty freaked out, especially if you're like Catelyn and you follow a different religion. I mean, it's got this face carved into it. She mentions that it's older than Winterfell itself, and I love how characters always talk about the Weirwood trees as if the eyes on the trees are following them
Yes.
wherever they go.
Yeah. She was basically stuck on how the red eyes are following her as she's walking in. Like she feels that she doesn't belong there, that it's a new environment. She knows this is where her husband goes after he performs execution. He goes there every time to collect his thoughts. And when she walks into the environment, it's like, I don't belong here, and it's creepy. And if you're not from this way, versus Ned's like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? It's a two different sides.
Just a regular day. Just a
Yeah,
regular
it's
day.
just two different sides of the coin, and showing your development as in the character, where they came from, and the future decisions.
Yeah, no, for sure. And she talks a little bit more, at least in her thoughts, about the Weirwoods having been cut down in the south. But in the north, every castle had its godswood, and every godswood its Weirwood tree. So a pretty stark pun intended, difference between the Northerners and the Southerners, right? So, they've got their own, they've got a different religion. Like you talked about, the weather's so much different. You learn pretty early on that the Northerners are quite different than the rest of Westeros.
Yes.
So we get the first time, I believe, of the Stark words, "Winter is coming," and this is something that I feel like at first glance I never think of or never thought about, but looking back, it's the only, and Catelyn mentions this, it's the only noble house that has words of this nature, right? Like all the other great houses, they have slogans or mottos of like, hear me roar or growing strong or something like that, something like
something
motivating,
something that basically says that I'm coming for your territory. This is my kingdom. You know who I am.
Right. Strong words, right?
Yes.
Strong words.
Yeah, like I am that guy. I am the king of my land. Versus
But
like the North is different. Yeah.
Right. The Starks, it's almost a warning, right? It's super ominous. It's super creepy. Like, don't let your guard down kind of message. Like, don't get comfortable because shit might pop off right around the corner.
That, and also I look at it on two sides to it, right? So that is the Northern way. Like I said, the old way. They mentioned a couple of times how like that's what they do. It tells you like Ned in the North is all about loyalty and about actually doing whatever the deed is protecting the North. That's what we're all gonna do. I don't care about X, Y, and Z. I don't care about what you're doing over there. Versus the South's like, yeah, I'm living in a beach sand. I got the nice, beautiful sun rocking on me. I care about other stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love this next part too when she's talking about the sword ice. And there's some info in here that kind of made me think, as more as I read these books through, the more I kind of start thinking and theorizing a little bit more. So she even says that she's not a fan of swords, but she couldn't help but kind of acknowledge the beauty in this blade, right? She talks about how it was forged in Valyria before the Doom, spell forged, whatever that means. Obviously, there's some magic in play here, and says that it's 400 years old, but the name Ice is even older, right? So that made me think, okay, so did the Starks have a blade before this particular ice that was also called Ice?
It had to be. And I guess where you're coming from too, because also a line what Catelyn puts on there is that Stark used to be like the king of the North. That's our words were far before when they were the kings. So this land has been Stark territory forever. And if the sword has a time period on it, but they have been there forever prior to that, there has to be another sword. Right.
And that's the thing that like really made me start thinking about, okay, the history of all of this, right? It's like, okay, what's that mean? I mean, like we learned later on, 400 years old, that was I'm trying to think when the Doom happened, but it was 100 years before Aegon the Conqueror took over Westeros, right? So about 400 years ago, because we're 300 years from Aegon's conquest. So
the timestamps, like a timeline of this entire story and the quest that you go on, it means something every time. If they say a time period into it, 400 years, that comes back into play later on. Right.
So it's, we don't have to get too down in the weeds about that, but something to think about. So then we get a little bit more info about like the Night's Watch. We find out that Ned's brother Benjen, is a man of the Night's Watch. Shout out to Benjen. But also, bad news there because he's been talking about, experiencing a rapid decline in manpower, through not just deserters like the man that Ned just beheaded, but disappearances beyond the wall. Ned, he mentions the king beyond the wall again, saying, just kind of chalking it up to, the wildlings are killing these men or abducting them beyond the wall.
It's becoming a problem now. Like now, actually, like people are just not only like, if you say they're scared of what the winter is coming, but now they have an option to like, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of my my allegiance, of my actual honor, and I'm gonna drop the let's go ahead and do my own thing. And that's not the way that the Starks conduct business.
Right, and it's interesting that Ned just kind of chalks it up to the king beyond the wall, but Catelyn is like, there are darker things beyond the wall, and she kind of like looks over her shoulder, like at the Weirwood tree.
It's right there watching.
which is like again very early on in this book, George is trying to tell us, hey, the king beyond the wall is the least of your fucking problems.
Yes, he's a person.
He's a person. These other things that Catelyn's alluding to, those are the things you got to watch out for.
Now let me ask you a question though. How do you feel about this when Catelyn being from the South, but is talking to Ned as in like, you should know this, bruh. Like, you should know there's things beyond this that can take us all out. We are saying winter is coming. That is our catchphrase. Everyone knows our mantra. But this King of the North, yeah, he's beyond the wall, but there's so many other things too. How do you feel when it comes down to her articulating her thoughts and trying to like tell him? Like, she also mentioned that Ned is a person that catches no signs. Like, she loves him, but he's not good on picking up things.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, and he kind of alludes to it when he says you've been listening to too much of old Nan's stories. I think, and what we see later on, because the Northerners are so different, they're so far away from everyone else, and they have a completely different culture, different religion. I feel like some of the other Southern kingdoms have probably, and we see some of it, but have definitely in the past too done a lot of negative Northern propaganda against the Northerners, and so I think telling those kind of like scary stories about like the North is a wild, crazy place. So of course Catelyn has probably heard of those stories before, right? Like as a girl or growing up or whatever. But again, it just kind of goes to show you that this whole, like you said, their mantra of winter is coming, and later on people talk about the North remembers. All of these mottos are warnings. They're trying to remind future generations of Northerners of what is to come. And to your point, Ned has clearly forgotten.
It
what
seems
those
like
words
it
are supposed to mean.
It definitely feels like that. It feels as if like Ned is conducting his job and he's basically saying, "Well, you're not protecting this. You got to go." And there's a person there that's kind of appeasing an appetizer for they want to like, I want to go sample this. We'll see what's going on. And he thinks that is the main culprit. When like, hey, your original roots say there's something else is coming. Like, you gotta stay focused on that.
Right. And I think we can probably just chalk it up to it just having been so long. Like he even mentions, don't worry about the others, like they don't exist anymore. If they even did. If they did, it was thousands and thousands of years ago.
Calvin came back with some fire, but no one's ever seen the others. No one ever seen a dire wolf either.
Right. I love that point right there. And again, it's going back to what you said about like Ned not picking up signs. Like Catelyn is very much like I wouldn't call her superstitious, but she has knowledge of. We'll get into it in a second about obviously the king is coming to Winterfell. His sigil is a stag. They found a stag's antler in the dire wolf's throat. Catelyn's like, these are bad omens for me, bro.
Yes.
And Ned's like, you're
so
fine.
Good. It's my
relax.
Yeah, it's my brother.
It's the homie. So, anyways, that brings us to our next point here. Catelyn gives him the news that Lord Jon Arryn of the Eyrie has passed away. So we get a little exposition about Ned's relationship with Jon Arryn. We learn a little bit more about his friendship with King Robert. And their rebellion against Mad King Aerys the Second Targaryen, which we'll touch on him later. We'll get lots more exposition about him later on. But we also find out that Jon Arryn was married to Catelyn's sister. So Ned, of course, he recommends that Catelyn go to the Eyrie to kind of just comfort her sister. She just lost her husband. Fill her, I think he says, fill her halls with, the laughter of children, just kind of like lift her spirits up.
Yes, because they also mentioned that the location she's going to is not to remind her of Lord of Lord John, and how
Right.
it's just not going to be a welcoming, enlightening environment.
Yeah, I think she says, the Erie was her husband's home, not
Hmm.
hers, right? So she might feel out of place there.
Yes.
And Catelyn would love to go, she says, but of course, there's more news that King Robert is coming to Winterfell.
Him in the
And I,
squad.
yeah, bringing the squad, bringing the whole squad with him. And I think it was so very telling of, okay, this is like Ned's basically his foster father, kind of, who just passed away, and Catelyn could see the sadness on his face. But when she told him that Robert was coming, he kind of like lit up, like, oh shit, the homie's on his way.
Yes, like that's the one thing that could like bring joy to this very um
Yeah, yeah, it was like the one thing that he could, yeah, John Aaron died, but like he's gonna see his friend. You
and
know what I
like
mean?
and then it's also seeing the backstory of like how Lord John was to King Robert and also Ned, and having both of them have the opportunity to grieve and to be together at this time is tremendous.
Yeah, yeah. And then we get a little bit more info about the Lannisters. Another great house.
Yay, Lannisters.
Um, I
Great.
can't believe you just cheered them like that.
Yay. I'm as sarcastically as a mug, but go ahead.
So we find out that Robert is married to a Lannister.
Hmm.
We get a little bit more inner dialogue from Catelyn talking about how they joined Robert's cause kind of really late in the game when victory was all but certain at that point.
That's
Um,
opportunists.
yeah,
It foreshadows everything. Like they're
yeah,
opportunists, they're going to jump on the bandwagon when things look good, but they're going to jump off if they feel it's not so well.
yep,
I
yep,
guess, and that's going to rub somebody that's about the code of ethics, and we mentioned in previous podcasts that you got to have your moral compass has to be in line with the Winterfell. Like you have to be. If it's not, we're not rocking with you. Like you're over
yeah,
there, we are over here.
yeah. And we talked about this kind of off air earlier about Ned is he's a very straight arrow guy.
Yes.
Ned is a very much like, say what you mean and mean what you say.
Hmm.
If there's a conflict, if I got an issue, I'm gonna pick a side and I'm gonna stand on it and I'm gonna see it all the way through because that's just how we do things up here.
Hmm.
And you get the sense that the Lannisters are not that way. So you can kind of see how I think it's even mentioned here in the text that Ned grimaced at the thought of all the Lannisters coming, and he's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta deal with these guys."
Yeah,
You know what I
absolutely.
mean?
Like seeing
So
the emotional roller coaster going from being sad to this is the
right,
man of like this stone cold. Like you see him put him over from sad to being happy to oh fuck, I gotta deal with this. Like, like
yeah, yeah.
it's love, man.
And
It's freaking awesome.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that just speaks to how much like exposition George can give us
Hmm.
just through a little bit of emotion, right? So just like you said, all those that emotional roller coaster that Ned just went on, it tells you everything you need to know about each group of people or each person that put him on the emotional roller coaster. Because to your point, he's Starks are brooders by nature.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like you said, you got this kind of stone faced Lord,
Hmm.
and you get the sadness from John Aaron, so you sense that there's love there. You get this excitement when he finds out that Robert's coming, and
Hmm.
then you get the uh,
Yeah, I don't want to deal with this crap.
when they mention the Lannisters.
And it's
Um,
so let me ask you a question. Tell me how you
yeah,
feel about this. So for we want to talk a little about the future. So we know the military structure of the Starks, how everything has to be with Ned is straight arrow. I don't really do the political game. When you have the whole kingdom is a political game, which is literally like twists and turns. And how you are straight and narrow doesn't always work. Do you feel that because of the story, they made sure we knew he was so straight and narrow that when things went adrift, that he wasn't going to change. His cells were going to go that direction.
I I think In short, yeah, I
Okay.
think we were told because in this chapter again, Catelyn talks about how her husband was not one to take signs,
Hmm.
right? But she's the observant one. You can just tell from her inner dialogue all the things that she's thinking about. She even
Yeah.
has to tell Ned, "Hey, look, this Lannister woman is our queen, so please watch what you say when she gets here." Like she knows that like Ned is not politically savvy.
Hmm.
Like you would think the best friend of the king would know not to say something sideways to his queen. But his wife is having to remind him like, "Hey, watch your mouth when she gets up here. I get it, but she's still our queen.
It
Let's
almost
be
makes you
easy
feel
about
like
this."
Ned doesn't care, and it feel like you're like, so what? Let's go
Yeah, he
next.
doesn't. It's because he doesn't. He just doesn't, and it's not. I don't think it comes from a place of like negativity either. It's just Ned's just like, this is just how I do things. Like I don't I don't say something I don't mean, and vice
Hmm.
versa. That's just not how it goes.
And with this chapter being like right now I'm redoing again the audio book is 13 minutes. It's like one of the shortest chapters there is in this
Yeah,
entire
very
book.
short chapter.
But you're learning about all these new characters coming and the emotions you see out of Ned and what it possibly can be, what brings him high, what brings him low. And then you hear about his wife talking about the queen. And then it's chosen her queen, I'm paraphrasing, says her pride is set to grow every year. Like you're
Hmm.
seeing this is a strong woman coming. This is not someone that can push over you, do what you want. You have the leader of the rebellion in King Robert, but then you have a queen who is very sassy, who actually is like, you're gonna know who I am.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. And I think again we were talking about the Lannisters being opportunists clearly
Mm-hmm.
because they came late to Robert's cause, and so of course they would be prideful because they kind of, I mean, they came late to his cause, and then the Lannisters became part of the royal family.
Yes.
So of course they're gonna be walking around sticking their chest out like their shit don't stink because
But I don't see you're like George is he's a genius because you are like okay they're bringing this like recipe to the north like you're gonna like having a person of the Ned's character, then you have Catelyn, you have King Robert, then you have Queen, and you have all these. They're going to face off. Like this is what's going to happen. Plus the children of our same of age, everything. It's like plus you have the direwolves now. Like, and this is a dark and gloomy setting. It's not the South, so they're traveling from this beautiful paradise weather up here to the bone chilling of the North. After being tired, after you just lost a secondary father, man, it's a lot of emotion going to pop off next chapter.
yeah, for sure, for sure. It's just again just foreshadowing all kind of kind of the inherent distrust I should say between the Starks and the Lannisters. And Ned actually calls it an infestation of Lannisters, so he doesn't like these people very much, and for good reason.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean that is Catelyn 1, pretty much. Next week we're gonna jump into one of my favorite characters, Daenerys. Cannot wait to revisit her chapters.
I get to see like the King Robert out. You see the eyes, yeah, lit up right there. Like you get to see the emotion, your voice,
Oh yeah,
everything.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. It's always a pleasant journey when you're reading a Daenerys chapter. So
Oh my goodness, I
we'll get
cannot
into
wait.
that.
I
We'll get into
cannot
that.
wait.
So, um, but yeah, Duran, you got anything else?
Nah, thank you guys for listening to the New Block Nerds. I cannot wait. So next week, let's do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again. All right, guys. Well, it's been real. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.